every day you and I get bombarded with negative news. Just like the body becomes what we eat, the mind becomes what we're putting in. It is important to listen to stories that not only gives you hope, but also inspires you and uplifts you. In this podcast, we're interviewing experts who will break down the solutions to the world's most pressing problems. And I promise you, if you listen to this podcast, you will not only stay informed, but you will also feel more energy in your life. Welcome to Great.com Talks with. Great.com is a philanthropic project where we're donating 100% of the profit towards the most effective cause areas. Right now, we're focusing on climate change to protect the rainforest, fund climate change technology. The best thing that you can do to help is to like and subscribe to the channel. And the topic of today is Asperger profile and autism spectra. What is that, and is it important to know if you have it or not? And to understand more about this, we invited Brenda Dater, who is the Associate Director at Asperger Autism Network, AANE. So I want to say, Brenda, welcome to this interview.
Oh, thank you, Spirit. I'm so pleased to be here with you today.
Brenda, if we start with help us understand what is Asperger profile and what is autism spectra?
Oh, great question to start with. So I'd like to start by talking a little bit about language, because your listeners may want to understand why we're using different language like Asperger profile or autism spectrum. We know that autistic people, their families, professionals all use different language to define this type of trait or diagnosis. And so we know some people like to use person first language, some people identity first language, like person first language is autistic person with autism, and that's an identity first language is autistic person. And so we feel like you need to use the language that is right for you. We're not here to tell you what language to use. And today, what we've done with AANE is we usually use Asperger profile or on the autism spectrum, and that's the language we'll use today. I'll use today when I'm talking. But know that if you prefer other language, if you're listening, that is absolutely fine. So I just wanted to put that at the top, because sometimes language becomes quite important in these conversations. But you asked, so what is it? Which is a really critical first step to understanding. And we look at it as it is wide and varied. When we talk about autism, some people define it really as a medical diagnosis and look at it through that lens. At AANE, we look at it through what we call an Asperger lens. So we're looking at a mixture of characteristics and traits based in neurology, so how you think and how you feel and how you experience the world through your senses, and as a unique way of looking at those things. So someone on the autism spectrum might have sensory sensitivities, they might have strong emotional reactions, they might have a very unique way of looking at a situation, understanding it and taking a perspective. And they have tremendous, tremendous strengths and abilities and interests. And I think some of the most interesting characters we see in pop culture these days and some of the most interesting writing comes from autistic individuals. So at AANE, we come very much from a strengths-based approach and helping people understand themselves and find their place.
My assumption is that people can actually go through life without knowing if you would have Asperger diagnosed. I know a friend of mine asked me if I was on the spectra, and I didn't know what the spectra was. So I asked her, what do you mean with the spectra? And she said, well, it's the autism spectra. Are you on it? Because I was acting in a way that was not socially like she was used to. And that's how I started to understand what this is. And is that common for people to discover this when they're adult?
Oh, very common. That is such a good question. It's especially common, I think, for women. Often women are not diagnosed or come to it much later because the testing we have and sort of the pop culture understanding of autism, at least through historically, has been around boys and men. So we often see women and girls getting diagnosed much later or coming to that understanding much later. But your experience, Spirit, is very common. We often hear from people who have connections, have found work, are making their way in the world, but have always felt a little bit different, have their own very unique take on things, have wondered socially, maybe something didn't work out, but it's more confusing. Why did that interaction go in that way? Or why did that job not work out with that manager? The social communication part can be very confusing at times and hard to figure out because the majority in our culture is a neurotypical view, those who are not autistic. And we really need to make space for the autistic view of the world and not try to make autistic people neurotypical, but try to build understanding so there's space for all of us to communicate with each other.
What I find fascinating is when like you spoke about, there's really strength to, if you would get diagnosed with Asperger. What my friend kind of picked up with me was that I was very slow. I was not in my communications. I was quite serious when it came to taking. When she asked me something, I always took it seriously to give her an honest answer back, and I really want to make sure that I'm genuine when I'm speaking. So connection is super important. And I see that as a superpower. So when I speak to people, I want to feel connected. And I've always struggled when it becomes too stereotypical or playful and kind of try to fit in. But there also this idea inside of me feeling that is it something wrong with me? And I guess that would be quite normal also for people. Like there's a superpower, but also is there something wrong with me? What do you say to that?
I think you expressed that beautifully. I think some of my best conversations are with people on the autism spectrum because it's just genuine and authentic, and we get you really build a relationship when you're talking about things that matter to you. And you don't, I really appreciate that, and I think what you're talking about when you're saying the discomfort or the dislike of conversations that are superficial, that, and I hear that all the time. I've worked with at A&E thousands of people through the years, and this is a very common thing. And I think that things live side by side. The sort of deep connection you can feel when it's authentic and genuine and you're talking about something that matters to you, you really can feel connected and build relationship with people. And then the piece you're talking about how feeling like something's wrong with you because you're always butting up against neurotypical expectations of what communication should be like. And, what a better place the world would be if more people understood that there's space to have different types of conversations and that we don't need to change autistic people to be non-autistic. You can't do that anyway, but to build the understanding of everybody will help, and that's one of the things we try to do through education and information, make people feel like there's nothing wrong with you, because that's difficult, but help you understand where and why those things might be expected and how you can advocate for yourself so that you let people know. Like you were saying, the perfect example I think you brought up is that sometimes it takes you longer to maybe respond to, the processing time you might need. that is very common. And what I've always said to folks when I've worked with them is it's okay to say to people, I need a minute to think about that. Let me think about that. Or I used to tell parents when they would make multiple requests of their kids, over and over when they didn't respond, I'd say, count to 30 in your head before you ask again. You need to give time for people to process and respond.
That's an excellent advice if you speak to someone who want to have it really make an effort to give you the best answer they can give. So one thing that I figured out myself was I didn't want to even look into if there was a diagnosis behind this patterns on me to be slower. And I guess that's also something that people are facing. Do I want to get a diagnosis for this to know, or do I just want to, okay, my friend is telling me that they are wondering if I'm on the spectrum. Yeah, that's okay. How would you, what does that look like? Do people often want to get the diagnosis, and what does it mean if you would try to do that?
Right. Well, again, a great question, because I think, it depends why you're seeking a diagnosis and what it will do for you. And for many people, a diagnosis helps you finally go, oh, now I understand. Now it's making sense. And to sort of, if people have been beating themselves up about what they have not been good at or what they haven't been able to do, and they have unrealistic expectations of themselves, I think a diagnosis sheds some light and helps them understand themselves better. So for that purpose, sometimes that's a very good reason to get a diagnosis. A diagnosis can also help you connect to services or supports or other people, a community, that can help you. So I think sometimes, a diagnosis can help with that. Also, it can help with accessing services like state or national services, depending on where your listeners are from. So you can get benefits and things like that. So there are reasons to get one. And a lot of adults I talk to don't go for a formal diagnosis. They just want to better understand themselves and find a community. But I do think to feel like you're the only one, or to feel like you don't understand why something is hard for you and you're feeling bad about it, that would be, to me, a reason to seek out a diagnosis, because then you can better understand yourself and you can access things like community and support. I mean, at A&E, we have, for instance, an artist collaborative, and in age for adults 18 to 87, I think. We've got adults part of that. And to me, how do they find each other if they don't understand sort of their mix of characteristics and diagnosis? Although I will say, anyone who thinks they fit, like our services and supports fit them, can come to us. You don't need a diagnosis to access things through AA&E. So I think it's a personal decision, but those are some of the pros, I think, for getting a diagnosis. And if it makes someone really anxious or they're worried about having a diagnosis known, then I would just talk more about it until you feel comfortable.
I can really see the benefit of finding other people that can understand you. What I always look for is people who want to speak from their heart when it comes to really be authentic in the meeting. And if I would go into a community, that would be like celebration time, because that's just such an human experience to speak to someone who want to connect back.
Oh, I completely agree with you. And I think that's what adults find in their community, and that's what the parents and other family members find. All the years I've been there, what I hear over and over again is, you're the first place I talked to that really got me. You get what it's like. And to find other people who feel that way, it is a relief. And people they feel like it's their home base.
If we talk about what, let's say that from child when you're a baby that you get some kind of Asperger spectra diagnosis, and you're the parent to this child. Is there anything that you would like to kind of help to dispel, or something that you want to reinforce a message if you're a parent to someone with Asperger or on the spectrum?
Oh, yeah, great question. I think, in years past, I know when my son got a diagnosis, he's going to be 25. So 22 years ago, he got a diagnosis. And I remember at the time, professionals would say to us things like, well, it's shadow. He's going to grow out of it. It's a shadowy symptom. He's got a lot of strengths. I have to tell you, and my son would tell you if he were here, that might be another interview you want to do at some point, that you do not grow out of autism. Autistic children grow up to be autistic adults. And the way he thinks and how he feels things, he's learned how to accommodate, and he's learned, he's matured. And so things that bothered him at 3 and 13 don't bother him at 24. But it's still the way he thinks. It's the way he likes to be in the world. It's the way he is. And what I would tell parents now is, there are supports and services to help you find the things that will support your child and their understanding. But I always say to parents, that it's so important to understand your child. Like, to me, that's the most important thing. Understand how autism impacts your child's life, because every autistic person is different. There are these constellation of strengths and challenges, but how it impacts you and how much it affects your day-to-day life is very unique. And so, to me, it's learning who your child is, what are their strengths, and really giving them so many opportunities to grow in those strengths and to feel good about themselves. Because the world, at least when my child was young, they wanted to turn him basically into a neurotypical person. And that was never going to happen. And it didn't happen. He's a wonderful person just as he is. He is not neurotypical. And he's in graduate school now, really enjoying studying his passion. So to me, the strengths-based approach is really important. Get support and community, find other people who are going through what you're going through, who are raising children on the autism spectrum, so you don't feel alone, because there are so many questions that come up raising any child, and especially a child on the autism spectrum. So I think community is the most important thing, finding other people, tuning into their strengths and really building on those. And then finding what if there are challenges that come up, which there will be, how to support them through that. So for instance, for my son, the most important thing he says to us that we did was, 3 things. One is we helped him understand himself. So he has a very positive self-concept for the most part. 2 was we got him a therapist who really understood Asperger's and autism and didn't try and turn him into someone else. And the 3rd thing is we got him a dog, his therapy dog. And that was, he says, those 3 things were the things that helped him the most.
I just had my first daughter. She's soon 1 year old, and I'm already worrying about, will she fit into the groups that she's going to encounter in the world, like class or school. So I guess that this is a normal kind of concern for parents. Will my child fit in? And then if you have Asperger, then that is already excluding you in some way. So I'm hearing that if you help to give your child a self-concept that is, you see the strength that you're having. Like if I love to see connection, that is such a strength. If I would have parents that understood that, and just tell me that, I guess that would have made a big difference every time I went into social awkward situations, to get to reflect back home with my parents in a safe environment. So I really see the what you're saying right now, the importance of that parents are aware of if their children are behaving differently, so that you can actually be with them in that.
Well, and I think, can I add one thing there, Spirit? Because I think you brought up a really important point, which is, I'm talking about focusing on the strengths, but I do think one of the most important pieces, especially mental health, is a huge, often co-occurring piece with Asperger's. So many people also experience pretty intense anxiety. And if that goes left untreated and acknowledged, often it can turn into depression, and we see that a lot. So one of the things I say is making sure, I know in my son's case, and many of the adults I've worked with and kids I've worked with, making sure they have a safe place to talk about those things and understand the perspective and validate their experience. You know, the fact that my son can come to us or his therapist and say, I feel, I'm really struggling with something. It doesn't make sense. This is too hard. I don't do it. Whatever he's struggling with. It's so important to have people who will help him understand that and see another way through. And often that's having a really good therapist. And as parents, just being understanding and supportive and acknowledge. Don't try and, as parents, and you're a new parent, as parents, we often, we don't want our children to go through any painful experiences. And I think the hard reality is they will go through painful experiences. We can't save them from all those things, but I think we inoculate them and we build their resiliency when we acknowledge their experience and validate it and help them know that there is help out there for them, so they don't have to go through it alone. They are not the only one experiencing this. And at the same time we're acknowledging the challenges, we're building up their joyful experiences too, so they can have a break from the things that are hard. I think what is so painful when I see kids or adults who don't have anything that they feel positively about, or we, as a consequence, take away the things that they're interested in to try and change behavior. And I say, don't take away the special interests. That's the thing that brings them joy in the day. And it's so important to have that. That makes things worse, usually.
That must be a core message, that if you are on the spectrum, you will have that throughout the life. And it's more about owning that rather than trying to change and adapt into something else. Yeah.
I think so.
We are talking now about the perspective of if you have a diagnosis, or if you don't have it, but if you kind of suspect that you might be on the spectrum. And we're also talking about the parents' kind of perspective. If we go into the work that you're doing at AANE, can you tell us a little bit about the organization and the work? What does that look like?
Oh, sure. So AANE was founded it's our 25th year, 25 years ago. And it was founded really because there were these people that we saw that didn't really have a place, were sort of left out. And it was this Asperger profile. And it used to be called Asperger's. The language has changed. Now it's just autism spectrum, but we still use Asperger's because so many people still use it. And really it started out as a place for people to get information through conferences and workshops, and support through support groups, and build community on social outings for adults. I mean, I think we saw that there were all these adults out there who weren't identified, didn't have service, didn't have a community. And through the 25 years, it's grown. We have over, 50,000 people now who have come to us over 25 years. And what I love about AANE is that we were founded, we have adults on the spectrum who are on our board of directors, who are on our staff, who volunteer for us. And they're the ones who teach us so much. about what their life is like. No one can speak to that better than someone living it. And I think that's why, as an organization, we've always included adults and family members. We have lots of parents on our staff as well as adults. And there's nothing better than calling up to ask a question and talking to someone who really understands what your life is like and what you're experiencing and can help and can say to you, you're not the only one who's going through that, and connect you up to what you need. So AE&E is broad. We serve the whole lifespan. So no matter what your age, we don't need to have a diagnosis. We will provide support to you in groups. We'll provide individualized services in coaching for adults. That's a very popular service. Parent coaching for parents who want help on issues. And actually, one of the newest things we're offering, newest programs, is called LifeNet. It's a service to help adults who just need a little bit more intensive support and want to live independently and maybe need some help on daily tasks, some tasks, or it's called a life management assistance program. And that's been incredibly popular, even during COVID. So what I love about AE&E, I've been there 14 years, so clearly I am very connected to the difference it makes for people. But what I love about it is when we see issues or we want to respond to something like women's programming, because we knew women were underdiagnosed and misdiagnosed. We developed a whole bunch of programs and conferences around women on the autism spectrum, or couples, neurodiverse couples, because we knew that the communication between couples when one member is neurodiverse was very challenging. And so we created a whole neurodiverse couples institute. And I love that we can, by talking to these thousands of people every year, we learn what do people need, and then we can develop programs and services to meet those needs. So I think and education and conferences, I forgot about that, I think. So that does that give you a sense of what we do and how we do it?
It does. I'm hearing a phrase saying, come as you are. So if you come as you are, you'll find some kind of program or support that is going to receive you as you are.
Oh, that's so funny, Spirit, because I don't know if I said that when we were talking, but I always say we meet people where they are and help them get where they want to go. That's how I think of AE&E. There's no judgment. You don't have to come knowing something, even knowing what your question is. So often someone calls and they say, I don't even know where to start. And I say, that's okay. That's all right. You don't need to know.
I'm very excited also to hear that you have coaching. I think I can see why that will be interesting. When I went to school, I was always the one who finished the exams the last, and I always wonder, why am I so slow? When I do work right now, sometimes I feel guilty because I'm so slow at work, and then I feel like, should I even invoice because I haven't delivered the same results that other people. So having a coach in that situation, just understand, okay, it's just why try to be like the environment when I'm like I am. I guess that's something like a coach could help you or help myself with. That's right. What I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's very, I would say that's in high demand. And now that, with COVID, we're virtual, so people can do coaching from anywhere. And it helps with all sorts of things. It's not therapy, but if you're saying, I want to better understand the processing time I need to do my work, or what you're talking about a little bit, it sounds like to me, Spirit, is processing speed, and also what we call executive functioning, which is how you start a task, work through a task, plan for a task, break things down into small pieces when they're big. And often that it can be very challenging. And executive functioning really impacts everything we do, if you think about it, because everything we do is a task of some sort or another. And often as adults, require multiple steps to finish something. And a coach can help you kind of see where that pain point is and offer some very practical, tailored suggestions for what you can try and then see if it works for you. So I have seen them use coaching for employment issues, for social things, for I want to find an apartment and I want to move out of my parents' house, and just what are the steps to do that and what would you need? And so I agree with you. I think coaching is one of those things that helps people understand themselves, build skills, and reach goals they want for themselves.
That is comforting to hear that this service exists. We're getting towards the end here, and I would like to give you the opportunity to, first, is there anything important that we missed to talk about that you want
to? I think the key thing I always say is that, it can be tough when you're not often with nonprofits, I guess we're trying to solve a problem, right? We're saying there's a problem out there and here's what we're going to do. And I think what's difficult about getting our message out sometimes is we don't see Asperger's as a problem. It's not that people with Asperger's or on the autism spectrum need to be different people. There are very real challenges to living with Asperger's and autism. There is no question. And so we need to mitigate those and help people address those challenges. In no way are we Pollyannish and saying everything is rosy and everything always works easily. We know that is not true. At the same time that we're supporting people, to me, it's can we support people to help them understand themselves and what place they want to have in the world? Can we help them build meaningful, connected lives? Can we help offer community so people don't feel alone? Because I think what there is an epidemic of is isolation and feeling alone. And so can we help people feel like they belong and they are valued? And then the third piece to me is the education and information. We just did a conference in the fall on autistic masking. And to me, what masking is what it sounds like, when you have to pretend to be someone you are not to fit in. And the enormous energy and toll that takes on autistic people, we have to address that. We have to find a way as a society. And I think Amy works towards this of not just accepting an awareness, but true inclusion and understanding the value and benefit of neurodiversity.
If you would kind of just summarize with a last message here, anything else you want to add as a last message?
I think what I would want your listeners to get from this is to come to our website. And if this is the last message part about what I would like them to do, I would like them to sign up for our newsletter and see if we can be helpful to them and find their place and reach out to us. And it's very easy to talk to us for free. So much of what we have is free because we know that many people are struggling financially. And so I hope that your listeners, if this speaks to them, if they know somebody with this kind of profile that sounds familiar to them, that they'll reach out to us. That's what I would want.
And the website is aane.org. aane.org. Personally, I feel inspired myself to go there and check out. So thank you for taking time clarifying what kind of support there are out there to not feel like you're not understood and feel isolated.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having us.